You're listening to the Devil Dog Talk Show.
This show contains explicit material and is recommended for ages 18 and older for mature audiences only. But hey, it's the internet.
All right, we're off to the races. We are off to the races. So, welcome to the Devil Dog Talk Show. We got Matt Feehan on tonight, and we're going to be talking a little bit about some policy stuff. And actually, it's above me. So once I go ahead and finish my little spiel here, I'm going to pass it on to Matt here, and he'll give you guys the rundown, the down low, or the upbeat, whatever you want to call it. All right, so today's episode, just like last episode with Brian Simpson's, brought to you sponsored by Plate Muscle Relief. That's right, platemusclerelief.com. Some great cream, CBD cream, legal everywhere because of CBD. No THC. You guys can check out their lab results and everything like that. Helped me out because my neck's been out, and that's the only reason why I was able to do the episode yesterday and actually be on today. And hopefully we'll get this episode out to where today and yesterday actually makes sense. Hopefully, right? All right, so let me go ahead and turn that over to Matt Feehan. Am I saying that right, Feehan?
Yeah, you got it. That's it's down south, it's Feehan, and then up north, it's Feehan. So, either way, it works. Devil Doc, absolutely appreciate and thank you for having me on your show, and thank you to the listeners to tuning in here. And I'm Matthew Feehan. I'm a principal, Feehan Consulting here in Massachusetts. I do lobbying work, research work, opposition research, a lot of good stuff in the legislative and policy arena.
Now, what does that mean as far as like consulting for firms and stuff? I'm very ignorant. I'm not gonna lie for certain things, and we kind of got introduced on Twitter when I was seeking a bit of information on and also guests for some important subjects, and the important subjects range from current agendas and politics and acts, and also parties that are taking a part in that. And so we came across through different references on that, and you'd reached out and I reached back, and I was like, yeah, man, this would be a good deal. So let me go ahead and stop the verbal diarrhea here and go ahead and figure out. So what does that do in a simple word for me? And because I just need that kind of help. What does that mean? Like you consult on in regards to, because I was looking through that, the information you had sent over, and I couldn't make heads or tails of it. I understood the gist of it. Like it seems like really great information. It seems to be a peek on the inside on how things kind of break down and who's involved. So I want to turn that over to you. So what is that specifically, just in general? Specifically in general, right?
Right. So I think a good place to start would be Schoolhouse Rock, right? If you grew up in the United States, that's pretty much most of our understanding of how a bill becomes law, right? And I think this should be pretty fair to say that most Americans understand how Congress works. At least I would hope at least that that piece of it, how legislation works, how a bunch of Republicans say this, a bunch of Democrats say that, and then in the end we got a bill that gets signed by the president, and we got new law. But the story doesn't end there. It usually ends for most media outlets because that's the fun, sexy part. You got Jon Stewart out there railing against Republicans on the PACT Act, and you got protesters and some pretty crazy stuff out in the legislative world. But that's not where it stops. So the story keeps going. It just gets not as exciting, and we get into what's called regulation. So you've got U.S. code, federal law. That's what most of these bills alter. If let's say, for instance, just as an example, let's say, for instance, a senator wants to change, or really their lobbyists are pushing a senator to change how one specific word, and that's all we're talking about, one word in federal law removed or changed or add in another word or add in another subparagraph. So the law is already existing. They're just going to modify and add one or two words or change a couple words, right? And then the trickle-down effect comes down to what's called CFR, so Code of Federal Regulations. And that's not really the fun part. That's the really boring part, super dry, to try and make regulations exciting. But it's very different from Congress, and it's very different from everybody's general understanding of how rules are made. So an agency like the Department of Veteran Affairs, and that's how you and I got hooked up, was talking about the Caregiver program, the Family Caregiver program. I work primarily in higher education.
Okay.
But so I'll backtrack a little bit. So one of the 501c3 tax exempt organizations caught my interest because they got into a little bit of a spat with a veteran caregiver on Twitter. Okay. I'm like, all right, well, that's interesting. That's not usual practice for a 501 tax exempt organization. So what's going on here? And then using that example, so what's happening is, and I dug into it a little bit deeper, that family caregiver program was changed through regulation. So the Department of Veteran Affairs, which is the federal agency that falls under the executive branch of government, they tweak some language in their regulation, which then turns into the conclusion that you saw online, that we saw online, and the folks, I get really understandably frustrated. Like, why am I out of the program? I thought I'd qualify for the program. They changed the regulation a little bit. And here's the big difference, and this is why I come in as a lobbyist and a regulatory expert, is where there's not that much attention on regulation. So because of that, changes happen quick, and they don't require the same type of debate that Congress has. So an agency, they can pull some comments in from the general public in a public notice. And so usually about 30 days, people can submit comments on what they think of the rule. But at the end of the day, that agency is going to do whatever that agency wants to do because it's the executive branch of government. So if the Department of Veteran Affairs says, hey, this is what we consider an eligible veteran for the caregiver program, bless off, swear off, boom, that's law. And excuse me, that's regulation and different from law. And that's kind of where you have different lobbyists working for different firms that try to push the outcome of where that regulation lands. And that's where I operate, is behind the scenes. I work in legislative area as well, some lobbying there, but primarily I focus on reading the really boring stuff that nobody wants to read.
Interesting. Now, I find myself more and more fascinated between the complexities of regulation and law and policies and enforcement, and especially with different agencies. I think everybody has a pulse on both left and right now on a few different agencies. Like if you're I hate identifying anything as left or right because that's just the world. I'm sorry, world, but that's the way it is. I'm gonna color code it real quick for everybody. You got the blue side, we're worried about ICE, the Border Patrol, we're worried about police, right? You got the red side, we're worried about Veterans Affairs, we're worried about EPA, we're worried about DEA, ATF, IRS, right? And so there's a lot of political bashing on both ends, and there's intrigue on both ends of all agencies, and there's distrust, and of course there's perspectives, there's opinions, right? Because nobody really knows how it breaks down. No, I don't know. Like you seem like you know a hell of a lot more than I do when it comes to brass tacks, right? But like you were saying, the less sexy part is kind of where the meat meets the potato, right? This is where it's finally starting to make sense, right? And to me, I think that's very fascinating to actually discuss the boring parts out loud, right? Because I'm a particular type of person, okay, that likes to have both sides of the table sit down and kind of have mutual respect. I did a lot of deep diving on that Twitter feeds and threads, and buddy, let me tell you, I support our community, hands down, and full stop, period. Okay. And if veterans or caregivers are feeling as though their only options are desperate moves or desperate tactics, emotional reactions, I agree with it. Like you were saying, it's excruciatingly frustrating, right? And I think that on an agency level, that I don't feel as though just kind of looking through stuff, following it a little bit. I also do follow a lot of the veteran service organizations. I praise the ones that do good, and I talk shit about the ones that aren't, and I pray and hope that mutually, we come together to do something to create better potentials and outcomes for our veteran community. In our last episode, I was discussing more so what type of options do veterans have for prescriptions, trying different medications, different therapies. What is the delay? Why is there a delay when it's really bad out in the world with suicide? And again, this is Suicide Prevention Month, so let's go ahead and hammer that down, right? But to see that people have actually done that, committed suicide, directly affiliated, directly as a result, at least coming from their people, because of the changes in this program, okay? It was kind of a shot in the throat, and I was like, hey, what is it that's happening? And what is it and what parties are doing what? And how do we get people at the table? Because clearly not everybody's invited, but I understand how politics work. Not everybody's invited at the table. And, if there's a special interest group or, that's usually about it. They're the ones at the table because they know when to buy the tickets. That's actually kind of the end result for a lot of politicking. I found is when you get a result on, or you figure out how to buy a ticket at a gala or a plate or some kind of a shareholder presentation. That's where you kind of get your foot in the door, and you can't get your foot in the door when you're pulling the whole grizzly bear pit bull move. And I get it. I've been there. I've been there, especially being a devil doc. Like I'm extremely protective of my guys and girls and people. I don't care how you identify. If you serve, you served, and that's how I feel. Period. Like end full statement. And then I feel that way too about civilians, because a lot of civilians, they do so much for our community. And at the same time, I feel as though if they knew the effect to what their actions may result in, I believe there would be a bigger shift in our equation outcome. What we're doing, what we're putting in, and what we're getting out of it. I think there would be a bigger shift if we all kind of woke up and started reading the boring stuff, right? So I wanted to ask another question for you, more so on the professional side. When you are kind of looking into a political subject or a lobbyist group, or you're lobbying for a specific policy, or is it more so a specific regulation, like you were saying, for the CFR, that's when the conversation actually begins and what's going to outcome or become something, right? As far as I understood it. And how does somebody then participate at that level? Like, how do they keep their finger on the pulse? Like you said about Jon Stewart with this PACT Act, like I would love for him to be able to talk and be at length and be like, oh yeah, but P.S., if you do apply for these benefits, it opens your entire claim back up so they can adjust all and every percentage rating that you have. And you might get screwed at the end of it because that's how it actually operates. But, that's just my perspective, my opinion. Is that what's going to happen with that? And also, do you think that's what's going to happen with the caregiver program, that there's just going to be a closed door conversation and those who are inside kind of negotiate what the terms are? And I'm trying not to flip flop, but I'm kind of, like I said, I'm a little bit of verbal diarrhea on the subject. Is the caregiver program then going to turn into a subcontracted program via whatever entities kind of eat away at that budget? Or discretionary budget, or however it works out. And is that how the PACT Act then is going to break down? Because what we can see, as a result for a lot of things, that I've seen, almost every veteran service organization, it becomes more of a conversation of dollars, donations, and not necessarily action or effective policy, but it becomes more of a look at we got passed. And I'm like, okay, it's wonderful. What are our next steps, people? I don't know, but I know that I feel like there are some, right? And so for me, like I said, I tell people I am literally partially retarded, okay? And that is no lie. That's no joke. I'm not trying to offend people. I have brain damages and all these conditions and whatnot. But you know what? I get up and I try to be the best human being I could be, and I try to be humble, and I try to look at things. And what I'm telling you guys, if you're listening to this point in time, check out the Twitter feeds on a lot of this different conversation. Just look up caregivers, #caregivers, and you can trend that and you can look at it. You can go #PACDAC. You can just hit up @John Stewart and be like, yo, John, what the hell is up with this? Something like that. And again, what's coming on with 9/11, I always talk about 9/11 and I always try to bring it up, especially around 9/11, because people get their emotions up. And I'm like, yes, but P.S., please never forget that there was 3 buildings, and also that the firefighters and first responders are still fighting for decent health coverage, different health care, life insurance, continuation for education benefits. Like, that's what I do like about Jon Stewart. You're right. It's not the sexiest part, but I think when you have a large bullhorn or a talking head like himself, that's kind of their part and their role. And then guys like you, and hopefully guys like me, like, I'm going to learn a little bit more and be like, hey, I know some politicians that would love to know more about how to actually, do what their constituents are voting for and what their tax dollars are being given to do. And then on the top part, the veteran service organizations that are reaping the benefits of advertising, marketing, and whatever else they can pull off the backs of veterans, right? If they could be more effective at their jobs and performance ratings. And I don't mean like a Rand Corps, survey here or there. I mean like a genuine boots on the ground. Hey, veterans, how do you feel about this? Like, legitimately, because a lot of the caregivers, again, on Twitter, #caregivers.com or just #caregivers, legitimately was some of the most volatile stuff I've seen on the internet. And I've been on the internet since like 1999. So, let me tell you, there's some crazy shit. Like, deep fakes is a real thing in an app that people can use. And let me tell you that it's funny, but it's not funny if you want to try to get people to talk. Okay. To me, I think everything's funny. I think the situation's funny. I think it's hilarious in the sense that if you provide something, how it could be taken differently once it reaches somebody else's eyes that may or may not be as qualified as the person that did the initial thing. That's just my opinions again. But let's go back to the brass tacks, right? People are tired of hearing me right now. So for you, how do you begin to look into something like the caregiver process, or what's going on with that process?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. I'll start by saying, first off, Double Doc, you got to give yourself more credit here. So a lot more than the average person from what I'm hearing already about how VSOs operate. So a VSO is a veteran service organization, and some of them lobby, some of them don't. Some of them are frontlines VSOs, as I coined the term. Frontline VSO means it does not lobby. It just stays out of DC, stays out of the politics, and just provides services to veterans. That's it. That's how I define, and my firm defines, a frontlines VSO. So with that out of the side, the sad truth is, as far as regulation goes, so you asked like how you purchase a ticket to the table, right? Or how you get a seat at the table. Well, you can't. And that's kind of the game here. And that's where lobbying comes in, and that's where these big, massive, huge firms get involved, because they pitch whose name should be on that committee, who's going to be on that advisory council. So in a way, the game's already rigged. You're playing with the stacked deck. So that's what agencies do. They play with stacked decks. They know what they want. They know their outcome. Hey, this is the rule. We want everyone to wear red shirts on Friday, and this is how our agency defines red, right? That's their conclusion. Now they're going to go out and they're going to go find the lobbyists out there, the big name firms that are going to help them, one, sell that message. So they'll get folks like Jon Stewart to get out there and, make raise hell. And then they'll also get some names together, and it's a short list. I mean, these advisory councils are tiny. We're not talking about hundreds and hundreds of people. We're talking about a handful of people in a room defining how a regulation affects the entire country. And those names, like I, for instance, I would not be selected to be on one of those advisory committees. There's not a chance. Not yet, at least. I'm working towards getting to that point. But those names, they're picked long in advance. And I'll give you an example. So the Department of Education right now, which is a Democratic Party Department of Education, that's no secret. It falls under the executive branch. They follow whatever their boss tells them to do. So they had this organized this rulemaking process called NEGREG on Twitter, hashtag NEGREG, NEGREG. It stands for negotiated rulemaking. So they get a whole bunch of representatives to speak on behalf of groups that would be, quote, substantially affected by the proposed rules, right? So that seems fair. It seems democratic. You pick one or two people that represent all of these groups because this rule could potentially affect them. So no surprise, the Department of Education picked two veteran service organizations to represent us, veterans and military members. But again, that wasn't a democratic process. I didn't get to vote. I didn't get to find out who's going to speak on behalf of veterans. The reason they picked those particular two VSOs, and I'll keep the politics out of it. I won't name them by name. You can find them pretty easily in my publications. But they picked those two VSOs specifically because they align politically with the agency. So they'll help support that outcome of that rule. So you can't really get a seat at the table because they don't want you to be at the table. Unless, of course, you agree with them politically and then you're a good fit. I'm not a good fit for most advisory councils in this current administration. That might change, down the road.
That makes a lot of sense, though. That does make a lot of sense, like what you were saying as far as what I'm hearing. And I need to water it down again because, again, I barely graduated high school, folks. Calm down. This sounds like high school politics all over again, right? Like, oh, yeah, well, no, we're cool. Do you, sign my yearbook? Okay, yeah, get away from me, bitch. Like that kind of just tongue-in-cheek, like very shallow, okay? Yeah,
exactly. And then when you sign that yearbook, that rule becomes a federal regulation and affects every single American in the entire country.
Yeah, it's like this, like Jim. He used to sign his fucking name every goddamn day. It was stay cool every year. I'm sorry, like I graduated every day. No, every year it'd be stay cool, have a great summer. I'm like, this is the most watered down. Can you just? We sat together. We did like classes. We played on the same team, bro. You can't be like, hey, I'm really gonna like. No, that's why I didn't buy yearbooks at all. After middle school, I was like, no, it's a waste of money. But I do remember the folks still, great old Jimbo. But that's the thing is for a lot of people, they don't transcend into this environment, okay, of politics. And I did not, transitioning from the military at all very well. And Brian just said this great, Brian Simpson again. And he said it really well as far as it's not about supporting those in need. It's about supporting those who don't get frustrated by the system. Okay. And
yeah, I love that. I remember listening to that and I could not agree with you more. You guys both nailed it with respect to the Department of Veteran Affairs and the agency principles. Nailed it.
In that, how many agencies and how many things did that like transcend into and just kind of absorb like that? Specific statement hit me on a depth that I still ruminated this morning about it. I was up late last night just trying to figure everything out, and I kept hitting that, and I was reading that, and I was like thinking about it all night. I was like, whoa, that was the shit that almost fucking killed me, was the frustration over the system that I talk up to. Like, I'm a very honest guy. Okay. I'm very honest. My listeners know I'm very honest. Okay. I do the psychotherapies. I do the psychiatries. I do all the things. Right. But the number one thing that I didn't realize was that not everybody you come into the world with, right? Whether it be a VSO, whether it be the Veterans Affairs, whether it even be military people, because we had those in there. They're not all giving it their best. And there was something new that I think I may have left it in the last show. I'm not too sure about silent quitting that's coming out too. Right. So to me, this is a lot of new words and a lot of new thoughts and the frustrations and, not getting, not a villainous, but there's this hostility involved in the procedures of things. Right. And it's on both sides. It's tangible on both sides. One side's very emotional. The other one's very sterile, but very insidious. Insidious. That's the word. And so to me, it comes off more deadly because the perspective is we're here to help. But when the hell has it ever been good for the government to come up and say, hey, we're here to help? I'm not saying that all government's bad. What I'm saying is when the results are dollars to dimes, not a good outcome. Like, I'm not even trying to bring up the whole electronic health record transfer crap that's going on. I'm not trying to bring up all the different types of payouts that the VA gives, wrongful deaths or whatnot. It is a huge organization, but that's what a lot of people don't understand. It's the biggest healthcare system on the planet Earth. It's the highest funded on the Earth, as far as I know.
Yep. And the PACT Act just made it a lot bigger.
There you go. Yeah, by hundreds of billions, right?
Yeah. So, and that's really interesting that you bring up the VA, because here's a perfect example of and I'm sorry to hear the transition didn't go well for you. That's a case for many veterans. It's unfortunate. It's and I don't think there's any cookie cutter perfect way to fix it. And so my solution, my proposed solution, for whatever it's worth, is veteran service organizations need to stop lying. So right now they're out there saying that we're nonpartisan, we're apolitical, and we don't lobby. All three of those things are bold-faced lies. So, and I can tell you that because I read way too much than the average person on this boring regulatory stuff and congressional letters and, testimony in Senate committees, where if you go on the views, whenever you're watching like an armed forces committee or a veteran services committee, there's 53 people online. In the entire country, you got 53 views. That's crazy.
Is that the I'm sorry if I got this wrong. Is that the hearings where you could call in, ask questions, and participate? Or is that the ones where they're just advertising, or not advertising, but they're publicly airing the hearing so you could be a part of it?
The latter. Okay. So, yeah, so those one, and again, their invitees, the folks that they're bringing in, they're already... the narrative has been created, and they need to pick people that follow with that narrative. And so they'll pick partisan veteran service organizations. And I can tell you, I don't want to start anything political on your show or anything, but I know my firm's tracking every single VSO and where they line politically and how political they are and what party they lean towards. I can tell you that for every single VSO. And I can tell you, the vast majority of them claim that they're nonpartisan and they don't lobby. So both those things aren't true. And that's what's frustrating to me, is I feel like it would help veterans a lot more if they were just being honest.
Now, do you think that comes into, I'm sorry to cut you off, but I just really want to hit this question. Do you think that comes down to identity politics, where we can't help the other because we have to care about our agenda or our identity? Like we were saying about the agencies, some blues, they support... I don't know which agency they support. I think you said education, right? And then the Reds, they support or don't support certain things. And so my question is, do you feel like it's more of an identity problem where we're not seeing each other as actual colleagues or actual each other?
Yep, you nailed it on the head. And it's unfortunate because there's two sides to that identity politics coin. One, you nailed it right there, is that we're not respecting each other. So, I can openly say without any hesitation that most of my publications lean right. I'm not afraid to admit that. I'm a conservative. Anyone that follows me or reads any of my Substacks, you'll see that I have a conservative leaning to my publications. Don't really see that in my personal opinion, you don't really see that with left-leaning veteran service organizations. And that's frustrating to me, and it makes me not respect them, because they know what they're doing. They know the policy positions they're pushing, and they know where they stand politically, yet they still say nonpartisan, apolitical, all that kind of stuff. And the second side of the identity politics is, if you criticize them, you're against veterans. So that's the most annoying part about identity politics, is that we can't have an honest discussion about policies that are right or wrong, or legislation that's right or wrong, because if you disagree with it, you're against disabled veterans, or you're against veterans, and you hate the troops.
So it becomes more of an ad hominem, attack the person, not the concept, not the theory, let's not actually take a logical step in rationality here. And that's the reason why I picked up on this topic so much. It's extremely personal. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm a little bit well reserved on that topic, but what I found to be the consistence, kind of what you're saying. Okay. And this comes in, and I mean it, I love left and right people. I'm apolitical. Like, it's okay for people to be atheists and agendered or whatever the fuck it is now. I'm apolitical now. Okay, I'm exhausted. Is that a political party? I'm exhausted. Am I allowed to be that? I think everybody is.
Yep.
Okay, like after 2.5, 3 years, right? Yeah, and I think a lot of things come from politics, like you were saying during the sexy phase. Like I bring up the past because it's recent past. With a lot of different movements on both the left and right. It flared up and then it calmed down. It flared up and then it calmed down. And it seems like every election series or year or season, it flares up and then it calms down. It flares. But the consistent thing is nobody does what the fuck they say they're going to do. And I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying all and everybody. Like a lot of guys, they say, hey, we support the veterans and they're the right leaning. And I go, yes, but hey, this would work. And they're because you did the yes, but, right? And it's the same for the left. The moment you go, yes, but, it falls on deaf ears because you're not there to modify their perspective. You're not there to educate or even discuss. You're not even there to learn or be educated from them. And that's on a lot of the times. To me, my experience has been on both sides. On the right side, I get more of a conversation. I'm not going to lie to you. On the left side, it turns excruciatingly emotional. And then as if you stepped on something you shan't not. It's like I bring up Voldemort and Harry Potter. Harry Potter. I just pictured a fucking toilet with a bunch of hair on it. Harry Potter, right? It's a lot of that. You can't use the Voldemort. Jeez, no, you did. Oops. And to me, it's like, why not just, let's start pulling hairs. Let's start counting teeth, and looking at it. What is it that's working? What is not? Because I don't think our nations in any state, and I mean it's in its totality. My ex-favorite word was Gestalt, but sounds a little too German. And just in case I sound right-leaning, I don't want nobody to call me a fucking Nazi, please. All right? Thanks. P.S. It's funny to me that it turns into that so quickly. And I don't understand it. Like, you actually read the stuff and she's and all that good things that makes the sandwich, right? Where everybody else is just like, I want a sandwich. I just want it. I want it now. And it becomes like this argument of a spoiled brat. And I'm not saying it at all in a bad way, in a negative way. I'm kind of like being that adult that just says, I'm watching the spoiled brat. It's my brat. I love this brat. I love them. I love them. Why would I bash something I love when I'm just trying to get the spoiled brat to understand, to calm down and play well with each other? Share, for God's sake. There's so many of us for a fucking fix. You can spread the wealth and share a bit, and I'm guaranteeing you the results would be a lot better. But like I said, like you said too, I'm not at the table. I'm over there. I'm over there by the garbage cans where nobody wants to sit because it smells like, all the food that everybody's throwing in there. And the reason
that's all right. Yeah, that's most Americans, and I'll tell you what, the only people at the table are representing special interests, and the really, really good lobbyists are the ones that aren't representing Democratic interests or Republican interests. They're representing fiscal interests. So they've been bankrolled by a major corporation. So they don't see a red or a blue bill. They see how much money is this going to bring out to my sector, and who are my corporations that will benefit from it. And we already know about that, the caregiver stuff, because you can read some of my articles on it. I've already pointed. I found that
very intriguing, actually. And,
I pointed like the exact company that is getting the windfall here, and they're publicly traded.
See, and that's something I found a lot more interesting, and I want to hit this again before we move on. The topic during these hearings, I watched a bunch of them because I don't have a consulting firm. I have this thing called No Life. And I enjoy watching, spouses of caregivers and fallen veterans, cry in congressional hearings. It's an enjoyment. It's enjoying to me. And it's nice to see, tenured veteran senators and congressmen and celebrities cry about how horrible a program's gone when its full intentions and understandings were to be helping the most vulnerable of disabled veterans, right? But so my point there was, it just seems so fascinating that, and I may sound sarcastic right now, world. If I do, it's because I am an asshole, and I always sound sarcastic. So my point to that is, how is it ethical? All right. Now, I don't know if there's regulatory agencies that look into ethics in anything involving the government, like with the true, like actual microscope or a tooth comb, like actually caring about what the fuck's going on. But what it feels and looks like is that there isn't. It's very amoral and very unethical in its process. And the very people that are like the Veterans Affairs, it's Veterans Affairs, right? You assume by the topic, it seems as though they would have the best interest in the veterans, but rarely is the case. And I think that's extremely bad. I'm sorry. It's just is. It's you got hundreds of billions of dollars pouring into an agency. It's not the ATF. You're not fighting alcohol, tobacco, firearms. That's a tangible thing. Go get some alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. Go regulate that. That's an easy thing. It's tangible. It's not a procedural thing like the ICE. Like you're not postponing immigration. You're not finding. You're not going. You're not. No. It's not. No. These people actually have been confirmed to be honorable for the most fucking part. Okay, because that's the requirements for getting the benefits. Even that eligibility is dependent upon, like Brian brought up, a DD 214. All right. and that thing, believe it or not, it's easy to get if you're paying attention on the way out. Don't try and get any paperwork during or after the fact, because you're just gonna like everybody. I want this on a repetition. You'll be frustrated with the system. You'll be so frustrated with the system. So to finalize that question, more specifically, how is funding being utilized in more specifically the caregiver program as it is? And then how, before I should say, this big change or dramatic event that caused a purge of 90% of its participants?
So I'll start with, this wasn't a surprise to anybody who follows regulation professionally, because the VA in the regulatory process not only held opportunities for public comment where people can submit public comments. You can follow vetregs.com, and I show you how to actually get onto the Federal Register, and I'll show you where the particular proposed notice for a rule is, and you can submit your comment, right? But this happened way back, like years ago. And they had multiple meetings, and these meetings are public. And these are the types of meetings that, like, they're more like what you described earlier. They're more like town halls. So again, that's where the meat and potatoes is that they've got experts, they've got doctors, they've got really, really smart people showing up to these town halls, either virtually or in person. I'm not sure whether those meetings a couple years ago were in person or not, but either way, there was the VA chief researcher. I'm blanking on her title. But she actually predicted this exact result 2 years ago, and she published it. And like, hey, here's what's probably going to happen if we interpret the rules to be this way. Here's the result. And the reason nobody saw that coming, or not many people saw that coming, kind of goes back to the very beginning of our segment here, is that there's not a lot of attention on it because it's not fun to watch. It's really boring, dry stuff. So nobody's going to read. Or not many people, are going to read, a 60-page financial research paper submitted by a VA researcher. They're just not going to. And so that's where I come in. I like reading that kind of stuff, and I like turning it into 1 or 2 paragraphs so my fellow brothers and sisters can kind of understand what's going on.
Makes it digestible. Like, it's actually digestible that way. I noticed that in an uptick in a lot of different policies, not only in the cost of policies. Everything's $1 trillion fucking dollars now. I don't know if nobody noticed that, but it is. But P.S. the way that things are worded in the bulk of words that put into a policy, like I get it, but I highly doubt anybody's actually reading it. Like I served a briefly, quite some years ago, or a year. I don't even remember. It was during this COVID, before COVID, on a community board out here. It's planning group, sure, whatever you want to call it. The most interesting facet was they were all shocked that I read the actual plan. It was only 94 pages, people. Okay, some of it was graphs. I'm not gonna lie.
pretty pictures for us military members. We need pictures.
Right? And I'm getting really tickled by the thought of this, that people are literally manipulating billions of dollars with the same shit that I saw, and they're not even reading what they're supposed to be doing. And they're just happy to be there. You know, it's like, they're super happy to be there with their pantsuits and that's great. So on that, do you feel that it's something worth actually putting energy to? Because a lot of times I get very discouraged in even discussing veteran politics or veterans benefits or veterans resources. And it isn't because I don't need them. I need them myself. I have lots of opinions. I'm trying to put that in the past, but at the same time, you know, I'm trying to look forward, and a lot of times there isn't an involvement with an organization or agency like the VA or VSOs. And the more and more I wish to become more involved with our brothers and sisters, it's more or less I don't want to pop their bubbles on how they may be experiencing a VSO or the VA. And then when it comes down to it, they reach back out and be like, no, man, I'm having the same motherfucking problems. Shit ain't right. And I go, whoa.
And that's a good point. Yeah, you're right on the money there with the VSO comment. And I'll tell you what, I'm not a real member of any veteran service organization. I paid a few of the membership fees just because I wanted to keep track of what these folks are doing on the Hill. But I'm not a serious member. And the reason for that is because, and you mentioned earlier, the high school, yearbook signing, like you're not part of like the little cliques. But I don't feel like VSOs are doing their constituents, their representatives, justice, because they have an agenda. So I promise you, if you're listening here and you're a member of VSO, if you think your VSO is truly nonpartisan and it's working on the Hill, that is not true. I promise you that's not true. And they have an agenda, and you're either with that agenda or you're against that agenda on particular things. And perfect example, Suicide Awareness Month, we'll talk about benzodiazepines, right?
Right.
So benzodiazepines and other alternative treatments. There's ketamine out there right now that's gotten solid research behind it. Evidence-based scientific research behind the solid use of benzodiazepines. I almost said heroin for a second. I was like, God, no.
Well, morphine, actually, people did get morphine for quite some time. And they actually had to change their policies because of that. So I'm not saying you're wrong about heroin. I'm just saying that it's just not called that.
Yeah. So, and this is where it gets really personal for me. And this is actually how I got involved. Like I try to keep my head in the higher education sector because it's really fun for me. I personally enjoy it. I have a personal interest in the veterans area because I'm a veteran myself. So when I hear some lobbyists during a armed forces committee hearing or a veterans committee hearing start rattling off about how, and anecdotes, these are pure anecdotes, mind you. This is not scientific evidence-based research. A lobbyist, a registered federal lobbyist from a VSO will go up there and say, well, I had this one friend who had a really bad experience with benzodiazepines, so I really feel like we shouldn't be using benzodiazepines. And then that becomes a congressional record. And then that VSO takes a policy position against benzodiazepines, and then they go out and they find researchers that will help them support their cause against the use of benzodiazepines. Now, personally, again, I have a vested interest as a veteran. I know some veterans may or may not depend on those benzodiazepines. And what's frustrating is that a VSO is publicly going against it, not based off science. They're not doctors. These folks aren't even medics. They're just one single veteran. They're one single lobbyist out there that has a personal opinion about benzodiazepines and then wants to push it on Congress and then create federal rules that then trickle down to the VA. And then you start asking for benzodiazepines or any other alternative treatments, and they're like, oh, get out of here, you freaking drug addict. That's because of VSOs. I promise you it's because of VSOs, and they need to stop doing it.
So do you think that's based off of an interpretation of maybe something potentially negative from a person that may not have the actual experience or actual wisdom? So like I like letting people think a lot first before I ever really kind of give my true self to, and I find that something more worthwhile because I find ignorance to be something less frustrating to deal with, and I mean that passionately.
Right.
It creates a different person in me. Because if I know I'm dealing with ignorance, I'm okay. If I know I'm dealing with violence or evil, I'm not okay. I'm not the guy that you want to be around if you're doing bad shit, and I can see right through it. It's just not me. I'm not the guy that's going to sit back and be like, oh no, this is totally cool. Let's just keep doing that. No. And you know, that's not good for veterans to be in those situations, because I'm not the only one. So to see something that's being advocated for or against without actually giving its due diligence, I find that very intolerable, especially with cannabis. I bring up cannabis a lot. I don't know if anybody else understands what I mean by that. Like, a lot of people just kind of write me off. Oh, you just like smoking weed all the time. I'm like, no, what I like is not going to jail for murder all the time. Like, I don't know if you know me, but you should definitely not push certain buttons. And this little plant, this little thing, like, I get it. A lot of people are against it. And the same thing with the mushrooms, the DMTs and the MDMAs and whatever. Like you're saying, alternative medicines and alternative practices, alternative therapies. With the VA, people don't understand that long-term one-on-one individual psychotherapy is not provided because it's considered not scientifically backed or not blah, blah, or not worth investing in. That's the truth. End of the day, whatever the rationality is, it's just not worth investing in. That's the reason why they only offer CBT, CPT. Don't get your CCCs in any kind of confusion there. They even recommend electroshock therapy. No. Sorry, it's not just shock. It's a convulsion. They shock your ass into a convulsion. And yeah, they totally were like, yeah, but it has great effects. I mean, yeah, because you're frying somebody's fucking brain into some kind of weird state. And then they have the chemicals, all the pharmaceutical drugs. I kind of put it into this compartment of a chemical lobotomization, because I feel as though that's what happened and occurred to me. With all trying different things, and the doctor's like, yeah, it's going to help. But when I did my research, I found out that a lot of the drugs they prescribed me were off-label use. And although the drug was approved through the FDA for a specific reason, they were now using it in a very, very general way. And it's more deadly, this different psychos and antipsychotic drugs, and you're smarter over there and all this than the planet Earth. You are listening. You know those scientific words. I don't. I just know it's like Breaking Bad type shit. And it's not even as fun as meth. It's probably worse. It's just 100% depression. And a lot of the drugs have the same side effect, increase suicide rates. I'm like, wait a minute. If I had a limp dick and you gave me a limp dick pill and all the thing is going to do is make me more limp dick, I think I'd be pissed off. And also, buddy, if I was bald and the pill you gave me then made me more bald, we would be pretty pissed off, huh, Rogaine? Yes, but no, because it's the VA. And so what I found is a lot of the special interest groups involved in a lot of different things advocate for some god-awful reason in such a fashion that it creates a very nice funnel for not only patients, workloads, contracts, and just in general donation dollars, and with very little outcome or interests to the outcomes that are being provided to the veterans themselves. Like with this caregiver program, I kind of fell in love with the whole, back and forth. And then I fell in love with the whole history of it, because the actual history of it was even more astounding, because a lot of people aren't even read into the history of it. Like, it's a cool subject. You're not read into it, buddy. No, but it's very intriguing that this happened, and thinking, I don't remember the whole history, but I know in 2011, there wasn't this many problems. In 2014, there wasn't this many problems. 2016, 17, now 18 was a big shift. And that's where a lot of people are like, whoa, what happened there? And then this year was a huge shift in such a dramatic way that people actually were talking about it. And I'm not saying that representatives didn't even show up to the hearing when they were supposed to or on time. There's a lot of things going on. Ukraine needs more money, right? I'm just kidding. We're not making more fucking trauma in the world, right? So in that regard, what is it that people could actually do then? Do we write congressmen? Do we riot and set shit on fire? That would be dope. No, I'm just kidding. Don't do that. But
I'll tell you what they can do. Devil Doc. They can follow vet regs. No, for real. What they can do is they can get more involved in the regulatory process. Because I think a lot of folks understand how the legislative process works. Contact your representative, contact your senator, And they've got a pretty good idea of staffers and how staffers work. And I've noticed that out there is that folks are correctly advocating for themselves and through advocates on the Hill for the legislative side of the House. But what's happening unique to our country right now is the regulatory side of the House has gotten out of control. It's become way too partisan. And because of that, there are some federal agencies that actually bar lobbyists from serving on advisory councils, the Department of Interior being one of them. So my previous example, the Department of Education hand selecting 2 highly political veterans representatives for their rulemaking through a stacked deck. The Department of Interior doesn't do that. They actually don't allow lobbyists. And that's good. That's good. I mean, it sucks for me because, I'd love to lobby, but I can't. And it's good for ethical reasons. And so the general public can get involved by tracking regulation. Most agencies, and this is unfortunately the truth, is most agencies are going to publish their rule without public input. Like the majority of the rules that go out there, they're quick, they're fast, and the agency will publish them, and boom, there's a new rule. Case in point, the VA just like hammered through the VA abortion thing because surprisingly, I just found out today there's like 300,000 veterans that need abortions tomorrow. But they pushed through that rulemaking process really aggressively and really fast, and there's no democratic process involved. And that's unique to our country because our executive branch, and this is the whole topic for another show, but like agency deference in the Supreme Court and most federal courts deferring to the agency and how they interpret their rules. One of Justice Scalia's like not good opinions. But where the public can get involved is they can track these rules and then they can comment and they can go on there and they can comment. And then what they can also do is that they can encourage their agencies and call them out when they're not doing ethical stuff. So if an agency like the Department of Education is picking a stacked deck with specific lobbyists, call them out for it, get those lobbyists out of the advisory council. Cause I'm sure like there's agencies like the FFA, right? You don't want, there's good sides to regulation. You don't want like federal judges and your local federal judge defining what's the safe altitude for a Cessna flying at a globe speed of blah, 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 right? You don't want a judge doing that. You want a former pilot who's done 40 years in the air. You want that person on a regulatory board saying what's the correct glide scope, right? So agencies are good and regulatory bodies are good in that sense, but keep the lobbyists out of it. So like, follow vet regs, jump on the regulation, follow each specific regulation. And more often than not, though, there are opportunities where folks can provide their individual comment and they can post it and it'll become part of the public record. And then when it goes south and the rule's stupid and gets turned around a year later, you can say, hey, my name's right there. I said that a year ago that was going to happen.
So it's literally like Facebook and Instagram. And what is the website called? Is it CFR.gov? What was that? The way you actually can be involved in this to find
it's the Federal Register, right?
Federal Register.
Federal Register. So all the agencies will publish their proposed rules, their current rules, and that's where to follow, the regulation.gov, I believe. And before I give out wrong information, I'm just going to check here. But you can jump on, regulations.gov. So that's it, regulations.gov. And they'll give you that is a window into CFR, Code of Federal Regulations. So not to be confused with federal law. So you can jump on regulations.gov, and my website and my publications and a few of my recent articles and for Substack show folks how to post a comment. And your comment might get lost in 257 other comments, and the agency never really reads it. But it's important that at least you know what you're talking about. You know what's happening with this rule. You participated in the process, and then you can call the agency out if they did something stupid. If they made a rule that was patently egregious.
So it'd be more effective than burning down, let's say, a McDonald's or rioting or robbing and looting.
Please don't burn down McDonald's.
Okay.
Please. Just
so no insurrection is needed, right? Just absolute nothing. You just got to go online, fucking share your emotions.
I'll tell you, there's some really unfiltered, hilarious comments on there, like hilarious. And what's sad is that, you know, like, can you guess like how many comments from the entire caregiver program from the public they actually received? Is only 257.
I can't imagine that. That sounds ridiculous because supposedly, my bad. Supposedly, there's 5 million fucking caregivers in the United States of America. I don't know how that number is generated, and I don't know who says this, but let me just go ahead and say, I don't think so. I'm not positive, but I don't think so. I'm not 100%, and everybody can use my conditions. It's okay. I don't mind being discriminated against. I got some thick skin, but 5 million seems like a very large number.
Yep. So they can, and they're powerful. You know, if an agency really does get, say for instance, like if an agency gets hit with 1,000 comments from the public and like, hey, we really want to have a meeting here, and we really want the curtains pulled back. We want to see your rulemaking process, and because we're going to get substantially affected by this proposed rule, we want a seat at the table. And obviously, again, they're not going to pick you individually. But
so was there even a study done, like to refocus it on the caregiver program? Was there like a study done on you said there was somebody wrote a paper or something, but it probably fell on deaf ears. But there was another thing, and I may be incorrect, that there was an actual recent study on the probability of being discharged being conducted by an organization or somebody. And it's super, like, I care about people, but I understand that there's racism and, you know, systemic crap and things suck. I'm totally on team everybody. Okay, calm down. But what I noticed about this specific program from this thing I read, that's smart of me to say. That's my bibliography. The thing I read, folks, 20 up to more than 20% on average was being black veterans or spouses being removed. I'm not going to say there wasn't even like on this paper, there wasn't even like Asian or fucking Mexican or Hispanics. I didn't see any of that shit. I just saw white and black kind of being discussed, and I kind of went through it very briefly. I try to stay out of anything that may trigger me too strongly. But the intriguing part was that it's kind of on the nose of telling on yourself. And after I read that, I was like, hey, look, I this is the reason why I feel like it's an ignorance thing. I watched a couple of the caregiver hearings. I listened to the testimonies. It was ridiculously emotional and, you know, triggering. I don't get offended easily, right? But I found it to be offense that the topic of conversation was repeatedly that the individuals providing the information were being trumped over by people who have no idea or concept of any medical standard or understanding of the veteran themselves. There was just kind of this ghastly overlook and disregard and minimization of not only these caregivers and veterans, but the work and ethics and morals and principles that it takes to take on the role of a caregiver for somebody that's disabled enough to need a caregiver. Now, to be a veteran that needs benefits, I feel, is one conversation, right? Right. So like a lot of veterans go, I don't need nothing from nobody. I'm a good man. I'm going to go out and I'm going to get mine. I'm like, great. Hey, P.S. if you just do your shit, a lot of us will be better off because your words matter and your involvement in this program known as the Veterans Affairs matters. And you don't get a choice at the end of the day on whether or not Jimmy's going to commit suicide or Tommy's going to commit suicide or Susan's going to commit suicide or Becky's going to. Nobody really knows who's going to do it at the end of the day. But what we're hoping is that we can work together to get these things fixed enough to where it's not something that we're doing with good intentions, yet falling very, 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 very short on our faces because the dollar signs or the what's that stuff called where you're like raised up because of your name or something? It's like you're not popularity now. That's not what they call it in like prestige.
You're talking about nepotism?
No, like your prestige. Like I'm a fucking my name's on this thing and I am that and I'm this senator or congressman, therefore I know better. Whatever that's known as, like, because people don't listen to guys like me and you, okay, when it comes to more than likely most things in life, especially women, okay? I'm not going to lie. My wife does listen to me. I listen to my wife. We share a great relationship. But when it comes down to the shit of opinion, my wife goes, bro, I'm not listening to you no more. I'm like, okay, cool. Like, it's okay. I get it. I'm going to try and rationalize your theory so I can think a little bit better about mine and then maybe come back to the table. Maybe we'll have a conversation. She's like, okay, let me know how that goes. Crazy. And it's super fun because 100% of the time, it's not her being actively mean. It's just her personality, right? And I find that to be more of the for instance. But after hearing the testimony, after seeing the regulation, after reading the CFR, after reading the congressional notes, right? Because there's a lot of stuff going with this caregiver program, ins and outs. I never thought it would get funded for $1.9 billion. After everything that happened, the person who's super frugal, like I'm stupid stingy, I find it to be flabbergasting to reduce a program by 90%, then ask for an increase of a budget from I think it's like 400 to 500 million. No. Yeah. To like 1.9 billion, I think. So, I mean, it's kind of like saying, hey, your car, we didn't fix it. We've actually ruined it, and we ruined it to the point where we have no more tires, no more wheels. 90% of the fucking car is gone, but we're going to need you to pay for all of it plus some, and not just plus some, more like quadruple. But that's not how billions work. It's not like quadruple. Millions to billions, it's like exponentially larger. That's the reason why when people go, oh, it's just a few hundred billion to like 1.9 or 2.9 trillion. That's not a big leap. I'm like, somebody didn't go to math school. Somebody failed in numbers. And to me, how does that now then become a conversation of rationality? Because, like I said, it's really hard to get veterans, like, disabled veterans, to actually, one, say, hey, I'm disabled, then two, I need help. Three, my wife does everything for me, helps me wipe my ass, etc., manages everything, does everything around the house. On top of it, basically gets me to not kill myself for more than 40 hours a week. And people are going to just disregard them, disregard her, disregard everybody, them, him, her, she's, him, zim, zammer, all the names, because it doesn't matter. This is an apolitical thing. Like, most veterans have a plethora of opinions and perspectives, agendas, political affiliations, and identities, and all of them are getting effed in the A, right? I don't know if that's acceptable.
That's a pretty good summary of it. And what's unfortunate, and this is kind of unique to the caregiver program, I say this generally, but it is that we are speaking about the caregiver program here, is that, like, if you've already got yours, what's your problem with someone else getting theirs? That's what I don't understand, is that I've seen some warring between the eras, and Congress has been feeding into that. So you've got Senate Armed Forces Committee, and you've got Veterans Committees, and they go out and they post and these little digital updates or whatever, they're infographics, right? And they show medals to represent different eras. And like, we're already divided enough in our country, and our veterans community is already getting pulled left, pulled right, split into subgroups and more subgroups. And now you want to break us up by era and then pit us against each other? That's not cool. And that's what I'm seeing with the caregiver program. So you got some senior veterans, some senior citizens that this bill helps. Absolutely. The Elizabeth Dole Act 100% will help senior citizen veterans, without a doubt.
But will it? Or is it just going to be another one of those things until we get this bitch in regulation? Now watch out. Because this is me being cynical, because I got to play devil's advocate. That's kind of part of the show, right? It's in the name. Not really. But hey, my point to that is it really? Like, I mean, look at the current program that's highly funded, right? And look at the current program on how it's being interpreted. To me, because from what I heard, is if you smile, you get discharged, you get upgraded or graduated, whatever it's called. If you send secure messages to your physicians on how you fell and got hurt, and it's not you actually sending it, it's you and your wife via together as the team, like everybody's telling us all to be, is like, be 1 on 2, 2 on 3. It's a teamwork. And then the I care, this is all marketing. I know they're marketing very well. They hate it because I know they're marketing. And I love their marketing because it actually hits the core values of all the veterans that they're supposed to serve. And I go, yeah, because, you fooled me once. You got me to go. You fooled me twice. You got me home from war. You fooled me 3 times when I was trying to ask for just a little bit of help. But motherfucker, 4 times it's on me. And I got to learn something. I better learn something because you ain't pulling one more again on me. Nuh-uh. No. Because I don't have the intestinal fortitude to take another lick. Because, buddy, I like getting violent after about 2 or 3 blows, and that ain't friendly. Okay, so yes, you're right. A lot of veterans and caregivers are eating each other. It's like a fucking crab trap. And I tell my wife, no, it's worse than a crab trap. It's like a monkey barrel filled with monkeys and crabs. So you got a bunch of fucking crazy ass apes going nuts, just pinching. You got the crabs pinching and pulling each other down. You got hair flying everywhere. You got screaming and clicking and slappity slap, clickety click. And then the whole time, somebody's taking their yacht out going, I'm doing a good job. Look at what I did for these veterans. And I'm like, no, it's not right. That's my opinion.
To this legislation and specific to this rule, I'll tell you what. Government auditing services. Okay, so that's one of the services.
That sounds cool. That sounds cool.
Yeah, that's one of the things that was built into this Elizabeth Dole Act. So the government has to audit these things, right? You mentioned earlier that someone smiles and they're out of the program. Well, how do they determine that, right? Is it the government or is it that's auditing? That's the government function, auditing. And like anything the government touches, it breaks it. And it doesn't know what it's doing, and it unfairly disenrolls someone or unfairly enrolls someone. I don't know, but the government will always, anything it touches, it breaks, in my opinion. So instead of auditing these veterans themselves, what the Elizabeth Dole Act does, and what many types of bills do, is it creates a carve out where it says, well, here's an opportunity for that yacht owner who does have a consulting firm that has the size and ability to provide government auditing services. Don't worry, government, we'll do it for you. Now, on one hand, that's great. That's absolutely great. The government shouldn't be doing this because they can't, like the unions, these people clock in for maybe 3 hours a week, in my opinion, right? Private sector should be doing this. However, you hit the nail on the head with that yacht owner that's going to nail that contract as a result of the bill passing. The regulation is going to go in there and define how to audit, what form to use, because that's another thing the VA posts to say, hey, we're thinking about changing this form or adding this other question. What do you think? They'll only get like 10 comments. Like, get out there and no, I want to say this form is stupid. I don't like this form, and here's why. But that private sector company is going to take over the government auditing function, and you can bet that they're going to have lobbyists on the Hill and firms working to try and win that contract.
Now, do you think their motivations? I understand. Okay, I very, very well. So all the listeners, everybody who's heard the shows in the previous years, I was extremely emotional in the time. Please forgive me. But in the spans of emotional beings and states, what I learned is that there's no real true motivation to perform well in any government agency, let alone the VA. And the incentive is to not perform well. And this is my cynical self coming out. Because if 22 veterans a day equate to $300 some odd billion a year currently, I wonder how much 33 will get us. You know what I mean? Like, let me think about how many yachts I could get if I increase this number. But, I just go, oops, the daisy during a congressional hearing. And within a year or two, the directors changed. The names have shifted, and then given another 3 years, and now all those names are now chair members and leading advocates within veteran service organizations that are getting subcontracts that are now absorbing not only the program's entirety of donation or tax dollars, but as well as veteran service organization donation dollars. And it's like this rinse, wash, repeat. And just, it's so vivid to me because I'm cynical. And because if I put myself in the shoes of somebody that had corporate training, right? And I don't mean this maliciously. I mean this as just an observer. Why wouldn't I put the dog down if it bit my hand, right? Why wouldn't I? Like, that's economics 101. I learned that in college. I did go for like a couple weeks. Why not learn the fact that veterans are dogs, service members are dogs. There are war dogs. You know, we call Marines devil dogs, right? Call us devil dogs. Don't get me wrong. I know what it means, baby. Tuffhunden, right? Now, at the end of the day, if that dog bit me, why wouldn't I pull it and pull it and pull it and put it down and beat it until it's all beaten, and then go ahead and just let it go ahead and jump off the bridge with its leash still around its neck? Why would I not let it do that? Because I save money. I would save billions and trillions of dollars. And then if I said, oh, this poor puppy, oh, give me donation dollars. Oh, poor puppy. It shouldn't have ever have jumped over the bridge with the leash on his neck. Poor puppy. P.S. Running for government. Give me donation dollars, right? And I find that to be more so the case of this tactic. And I bring up 9/11 because we never want to forget. It's coming up. Hopefully the show comes out maybe during that. I don't know. Maybe I want to stir a pot, right? People never want to forget, and it's becoming more of a celebration or a remembrance. And the more and more we get to it, I go, you know what I don't forget is how after that punch was blown and given, how the United States kind of came together and we got some shit done. Yeah, it wasn't the best shit. Yeah, it wasn't exactly the most informed. Okay. We can go back and understand the 20-year war, 21-year war that we've been in and out of conflict, however you want to describe it. It's just as bad as Vietnam. And I also like to tie in all the different service eras because on our show, I care about everybody deeply. Like I have veterans that are Vietnam era. I know people that served in Korea, World War II even. And those old fuckers, man, they'll tell you some shit that makes your head ring. Like just like, wait, what? War was like that? Yeah, bro. And then we shoved the grenade all up in the way in their ass. Whoa. That is some Geneva conventions weren't even made up yet. Oh, I think they were, but okay, Bruce, calm down. Hey, somebody gotta get this guy a water. I think he's had too much wild turkey. He's 98. So, like, they're great. I fucking love them. And so this conversation, like, you know, our own eating our own, it is a bit of the classic dog tale, right? Not to be too punny, but to me, it is. It's literally it's what the politics they call wagging the dog or wagging the tail or some shit or whatever that game is called. And I think we all fall into this emotional state of romanticism of service and remembrance. And of course, 9/11, like I said, but also, you know, last year we lost a bunch of troops for no particular reason. But to me, it was excruciatingly triggering to see nothing more than tactical error leading to more death. Like that's happened repeatedly. I've seen it. Lots of my friends have seen it. Lots of people discuss it. But when you have a community that is so versatile and so large that touches into every demographic, which is the United States military and its services. So I don't just mean the military, because a lot of service organizations, I mean like government organizations, you know, the contracting groups, a lot of them do a job that honestly a lot of people are not willing to discuss out loud that is necessary. And to me, I don't think we should forget those folks, just like we should never forget about the sacrifice that a lot of open water sailors and Marines and Army did in Vietnam that were hit with the same chemicals and the same drinking water was Agent Orange, but because it was 10 miles off of the shore. No, bitch, like it's the same water. They just dropped them off. Where do you think they get it from? They just shows up. Here's Agent Orange. No, it comes from the fucking ship. It's called logistics, motherfucker. Oh, sorry. So my point is that a lot of us forget the fact that, again, it's not just, you know, all the cool stuff like you were saying. Okay, it's not just, you know, the Jon Stewarts and, you know, the celebrities caring about the veterans and the first responders for a season or a day or a holiday or a weekend. It's actually about putting the ball through the fucking uprights. Okay, making sure we're following through, and that's honestly as simple as I can put it. Because until we understand that as a community, I don't think veterans are going to trust us anybody, like especially a guy who has a microphone in front of his fucking face. I have friends that know me, but nobody else knows me, the difference between Tom, Dick, and Harry. Okay, they just go, here's another guy with the stupid fucking podcast. Well, I've been doing it for quite some time, almost like I don't even know how many years, more than 8 years, right? And every year there's this same problem. It's the same shit. It drives me fucking mad. And then when I see repetitiously the same mistakes, oh, we're just not inviting the right people in the room. It's just an oopsie daisy. And this is the director, okay, of the VA talking to congressmen and senators and the chair and all these whatever big names, okay? And they're in the room and the excuse is oopsie daisies. We're trying our best. Nah.
Yeah. That was their response to the hiring crisis. So what happened? Like, I was watching a committee hearing one time, and they bold-faced just asked the VA representatives, just straight cold, do you think the vaccine mandate resulted in your insane numbers of layoffs? Right, well, we have no way to connect those two things. Like, really? Like, you got a team of some of the smartest people out there working for y'all as researchers, and you can't put two and two together. And then I go to the VA, and half the employees aren't wearing masks anymore. So they fired a bunch of other ones that didn't get the vaccine mandate, and now we're not, like, we're quasi doing the whole mask thing. It's the same deal. These committees, these senior level VA officials never have the real truthful answer. But I guess, that's kind of the legislative lobbying process, is you got to know how to speak, and you got to know how to, speak to these senators and congressmen. And yeah, I think if we come together a little bit more and the era's kind of infighting dies down a little bit, like I'm personally hoping in our veteran community we get a little bit more, you do you, I do me. So if my brother or sister out there really benefits from like ketamine treatments and wants to explore, or your example earlier, marijuana, cannabis, perfect example, in legal states where it's actually legal to do it, the federal government shouldn't be getting in the way of that. But then, of course, because of politics, the federal government will get in the way of something that's more policy in favor, for instance, abortions. So this particular Democratic VA is pushing for one policy agenda, whereas they're going to let the marijuana, cannabis stuff, alternative medicine slide. And that's where I'm really hoping these VSOs, one, start being honest. Like, just tell your folks that, hey, listen, here's where our policies are. Here's what we typically lobby. And, we lean right on a lot of these issues, or we lean left on a bunch of issues. Because I'll tell you what, there's one particular hardcore liberal VSO out there, and there's one publication they put out, like, really good research, and they cited a whole bunch of medical journals, and they're on point. I agree with them. Me, a conservative, I agree wholeheartedly with this hardcore leftist VSO, because they're right on alternative medicine, in my opinion, because they're allowing the federal agency, or hoping to convince Congress to allow the federal agency to open up that sphere of potential alternative treatments, which includes cannabis. But there's other VSOs that are, oh no, can't do cannabis, can't do that as a policy agenda. Well, then you need to tell your members that you're taking donations from. You need to tell your members, hey, we take a strong stance against cannabis or ketamine or any other alternative treatment. I just really wish VSOs would just be more honest.
I'm sorry to cut you off there. Do you think it would be better for the community if it wasn't my way or the highway with the people that have a seat at the table, but more of a, look, we've used the excuse oopsie daisy too much. We're absorbing way too much of costs. We're pushing through, this abortion bill. Can we just go ahead? I don't know if they call it a dog ear or dog tag or a pig ear, whatever they add on to the bottom of a bill that usually pisses somebody off because they wanted to get it passed this way, but was like, oh no, but if you pass this, you got to pass this because, it's right on there. It's right on there. Page 5,222, subsection C, very blah, 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 right? So why can't we just put like a little bit of weed at the bottom of that motherfucker too? Like, you can go kill your baby. P.S. Here's a fucking ounce of weed to help you about your murder. Like, I mean, it's great. I'm pro-choice. Okay, I am. I'm pro-choice. I feel that adult abortions should be valid, and I should feel that there should be voluntary and involuntary adult abortions. Like, if you touch a little kid inappropriately, I should be able to abort your ass, right? Straight up. Sorry. That's how I feel. And then when people get mad at me, I'll be like, it was my body, my choice. Like, no, you totally killed somebody else. No, he's just a clump of cells. Didn't even have a life. I don't even know. It's my opinion, my body, my choice. And I know that's probably going to rifle up a bunch of people and they're going to get angry, but I go, look, Bill Burr just said this shit really well. That's why I love comedians. Okay. He goes, before you walked into that room and did something, it was something, wasn't it? And then when you walked out, no more. It became, actually, this is going to get real dark. It became a product to be distributed, okay? It was a thing before you went in there, your body, your choice. But now for $500, $400, or, you know, if it's been donated by the Gates Foundation, 100%, if you're African American or black, you can get a free abortion thanks to the Bill Gates Foundation and, you know, all them. And it's true. You can go to Planned Parenthood. You can ask them these questions. You can see the recordings. I'm all good for that if that's your choice. P.S. If you just like, you know, keep them or not, again, but if you were to distribute your own body, your choice, that thing is worth a lot more than $500. And I'm not trying to be dark or twisted or demented here. Research body parts, okay? It goes into a lot of different compartments. When you're saying, I want to donate my body when you die, right? And your license plate. Your body doesn't stay in one place. It goes into different places. And it goes to the higher bidder. And whoever acquired your body and is now selling your body for research. And believe it or not, I worked on some bodies for research. And they're never together. It's this guy's foot's there and this guy's head's there. And we're researching some lungs over here. Rarely is it a full cadaver because it's just more lucrative to distribute and reuse single body parts. I know it sounds fucked up, but that's the way it works, baby. Now, to talk about this legislation, like just as candidly as I did, I'm totally for it. Fund the shit out of it. Have people that choose that, you know, be doing it wherever they want. But, you know, let's go ahead and put some as well potentially controversial stuff in this thing and get it passed. Hey, you want some ecstasy, bro? Here's 5 pills. You go to your local VA, you know, there you go. You know, hey, we're good. You get 5 pills. No questions asked. Whatever, bro. Have a good time. Or here's an ounce of weed. Like nothing. There's no, here you go. But that's not what I'm saying. See, that's the worst part is we're not saying frivolously give people drugs. We're not saying look into it just a little bit. A lot of people, these things have been researched by the NIH, NIDAA. There's a great scientist out there, Sue Sisley, Dr. Sue Sisley, before I minimize her because she's a doctor and she's a great woman. Great, amazing things out there. There's a lot of people doing research. And I love to talk about cannabis because, one, it's much like how cocaine is in this nation. Everybody in the Senate and Congress knows somebody or has seen somebody smoke cocaine. I promise you in person. I promise you. And I guarantee you our current president has probably seen his son smoke crack because I did. And it was available on the internet for everybody to see. I'm not against it. I'm not. You do you, man. You do you. Smoke that crack, baby. Shit. But if people are going to hold back a little bit of weed that may stop 22 people a day from killing themselves while consuming hundreds of billions of dollars a year on that exact budget to prevent or at least help in one part this thing called suicide. Wow. I don't know. Maybe we just need to have the WHO get involved or the WEF, World Economic Forum. I'll call up Klaus right now. Klaus Schwab, I have an idea. This cannabis, it's great. He'd be like, okay, yeah, we're going to build back so much better with weed. Yes, there we go. But that's like, you know, I guess that's a political view. I don't know. I don't see it as political. I just see it as it's very odd that, you know, if a lot of red people and blue people got together and, you know, held hands once in a while and said, hey, I want to have electrical cars, but I also want gas. I want coal. I want nuclear. I want hydro. I want wind. I want it all because I don't feel like getting pigeonholed or fucking skull fucked by the future because we decided to have nothing but electrical cars and our power grid and our infrastructure can't even fucking maintain that shit when it's hot outside and we need to turn on some goddamn air conditioning and now all of a sudden I'm getting a fucking warning on if not I could power up my fucking Tesla. Not cool. Not cool.
Yeah, no, it's you definitely got the political positions of each unique veteran right on the money there. And I think that's what kind of frustrates me about this particular rulemaking process and this particular agency. And again, I've got my views on abortion. And I respect my fellow veterans, brothers and sisters who have their views on abortion. But jamming regulation through and making one agency partisan is not the answer. And I'll give you the perfect example of that is the Department of Education. So the Department of Education has become 100% partisan, and really you can argue who started it, right? But that agency has been against for-profit education, right? And then it's been for unions, and then goes back against for-profits, and then we play this stupid game, left, right, left, right, left, right, and it changes the rules, and quite literally changes the regulation every executive that comes through. And if we have a little bit less of that, because I guarantee that's not happening at the FFA to the extent that it's happening at the Department of Education, the Federal Aviation Administration. You don't have planes, speeds, and altitudes and all this highly technical pilot jargon changed every executive. That doesn't happen because there isn't really, I don't really work in the aviation area, but I couldn't imagine there'd be too much politics involved or corporate special interest, maybe sound, I don't know. But with regard to the Department of Education, there's a huge corporate interest because you have one Department of Education that is for-profit, small church, mom and pop, schools that are owned by a conglomerate that's publicly traded, and then another Department of Education that comes in and goes, nope, we're going to whack that. We're going to regulate your industry out of existence, and then we're going to prop up our union buddies. And that's what's happening here at the Department of Veteran Affairs. A lot of unions lobby, and they don't make it public. And so that's another thing I try and do with vet regs is try and just, I know the old stereotype that it's, the Republicans with the corporate interest. There's Democrats with corporate interest too. And not just corporate interest, they have union interests, many union interests. So perfect example in the PACT Act was the American Federation of Government Employees, AFGE, massive federal union that works with a whole bunch of different agencies and lobbies aggressively and donates to Democrats aggressively. They're a huge winner in the PACT Act, and they're one of the ones that lobbied. But you don't really hear that too often, on the legislative side of the house. So that's the second prong of vet regs is I'm trying to get folks to hear that it's not just one side that's using lobbyists. It's a collective, and both sides use it. And if we just kind of, within our veteran community, recognize that a lot of VSOs are doing that, I think that would help us out a lot because we, kind of pull back the curtain a little bit. And I'll give you an example of one VSO that I know that doesn't do a lot of lobbying or really specifically put out there that it doesn't lobby is Code of Vets. I'm not sure if you heard about these folks. But they're one of the VSOs that I consider like a front lines VSO. They take donations and they poof right into the veteran's hands that needs it. And they work tirelessly to get money straight from donations into veterans' hands. There's not a huge bridge of corporate interest there. Whereas you look at the IRS Form 990 for tax-exempt organizations of, say, disabled American veterans. The CEO makes over $600,000. And this is public information. You can go find this out really easy, or you can just go follow vet regs, and I publish all the salaries of major VSOs.
See, that's very important to look at because what you're saying is eventually a lot of these programs are going to probably be subcontracted into these veteran service organizations. And I think of it more of us like under the guise that it's going to work out better. But then you're just bringing up one individual salary, and I'm going like, wait a minute. Because we all know there's got to be at least 15 administrators for one person that does a job, right? And at least 25 vendors for one thing that we need in order to get that one guy to one thing to do that one person, that one job that would have cost, a caregiver maybe, $700, $3,000 a month. They kind of see it as their responsibility. They go out to Rite Aid, they purchase the things that they think would work better for the veteran or does work better for the veteran. But instead, now you got to go to this contracted agency through force or duress or else, right? and now that the $5.99 cream you got at the Rite Aid or from your buddy, that $80 CBD cream, if you want that same stuff, you have to go through the vendor, and the vendor, and the administrator and their administration, and that's $500 billion, bruh. We need that. They look at you tight lip. We need that, homie. Fuck. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, and here's something for your listeners too. So like, you can there's like a few different ways you can engage, right? You can follow regulation, regulations.gov, go into the Federal Register and look at regulations. You can also follow corporations. That's really kind of because corporations don't like bad press, right? That's the easiest way for a corporation to step out of something. They're not going to put their name and their logo on something that has bad press. It costs their investors money. So if you find out, if you do a little paper trail, you do a little bit of digging, and you go through this regulation, you find out who benefits. Oh, look, here's this particular corporation that's really sending its lobbying team. And you can do that by also checking VSOs, because they're tax exempt. They have what's called an IRS, Internal Revenue Service Form 990. And what that does is it just shares publicly. Most universities in the United States are nonprofits. So you can actually go see your university president who's telling you all to, eat ramen in the rooms and, save the college, where he or she is making, over $750,000 a year. So that's the second way, is to look at the IRS Form 990s. And then also just do the corporate research and ask yourself who benefits, right? So who, because I tell everybody this whenever they ask about regulation legislation, who benefits, right? So if you got a veteran who needs a neck brace, I think they're going for Walmart for like $20, something like that, and you can get a soft collar neck brace for $20, right? It does not cost the U.S. government $20 to do that neck brace. You know what it actually costs the U.S. government to give a veteran a neck brace?
Break it down.
Like if it's insane. Like the number of special interests that fall under just giving a veteran a neck brace, that $20 thing goes from $20 at Walmart to thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because it's got to go through 6 different, regulatory steps and procurement steps. Because that's another way, folks, your listeners can get engaged, is look at agencies' procurement records. So procurement is government contracting, who benefits. That's another way to look at like IRS Form 990s, and then look at procurement records and who wins contracts. And it might not be as obvious as like company A lobbied this senator and then company A wins this contract. It's not going to be that obvious. They'll have subcontractors. So if company A lobbies senator, right, Senator X, you look at the procurement and the contracts that come out of that bill a couple of years later, and you're going to see a subcontractor C or D, and then you put the dots together, and oh, look at that. Surprisingly, it's a subsidiary of A who lobbied at the very beginning of this whole rulemaking process.
What
and now,
coincidence.
Yeah, exactly. So like that neck collar that was only $20 at Walmart, now us, the taxpayer, paid thousands of dollars more for what that neck collar is actually worth. And and even Walmart itself is upselling that thing. That's probably only
just totally reminds me of this. This is actually public knowledge now, so I don't feel so unsafe saying it. But KBR back in the day used to charge per stop, not per load. So the truck drivers would go drop a load off and then keep going each stop, and then come back each stop, and then pick up another load and do it again. And each stop they got paid, not each load. So it's another way. I consider it cooking the books. I consider it gun decking, fraud. I wouldn't say too far as embezzlement, because yes, you're still doing something, but that something is not necessary. I find this thing, all of what we're discussing, all right, a bit more of a top-down review instead of a bottom-up review, right? We're not trying to really figure out what the problems are. We're just trying to maintain a stream of income, a budget, our bottom line, our shareholders' interests, and that comes at a cost. Generationally, wow, that took me a minute. Generationally, right? It takes a toll. These policies take a toll generationally, fuck, I'm falling apart here. Generationally, they take a toll, and yet on the immediate, there seems to be this delayed reaction because, like you said, bills pass too fast, but they're not bills. They're regulations. They're interpretations of regulations. They're actually a little bit more shut behind the door action, more going on than anybody could actually fathom. There's special interest groups. There's billions of dollars going on, if not trillions of dollars going around, and everybody wants their piece of cake. And it comes down to day-to-day politics, not 10-year, 20-year, 30-year impact concepts. And to me, that just seems a little bit too short-sighted and irresponsible and negligent. There you go. Negligent. It seems negligent in my eyes as a person, a human being, right? Because again, I'm never going to become the president of the United States that has the power of an executive branch that can literally change everything that we discussed in one fucking evening. But me stating that makes me feel like an asshole because the old guy's doing his best, right? But what about the next person and the next person and the next person and, you know, the next 30-year war, the next 20-year war, the next generation that's eating each other alive because guess what? We're just all starving, trying to get a little piece of the pie. To me, it just seems not ruthless, but ignorant. It seems very fucking stupid. To me, if there's going to be an old man at the bar giving me any kind of lessons from the next era of warfare, I hope it's how do I actually make effective change in the world from at least one demographic of the veteran community. Now, I'm not saying that the civilians, they don't deserve shit, right? They do. Everybody does. But the last time I checked, certain people signed a contract. Certain people actually did a damn thing. So there's got to be a difference. I'm not saying that nobody deserves nothing. I'm saying that, yes, there's should be a little bit of debt relief. There should be a little bit better education. There should be a little bit better e-commerce, economics. There should be a lot better stuff. Okay, in 2022, there's not even a fucking hoverboard, for God's sake. But you know, I digress. Let's focus on some shit we can do. You know, let's hit up Matt Feehan here and look at all the stuff that he has and all the things that he's covering. Let's look at, you know, our Devil Dog Talk Show and the progress that we're building into for this season. You know, let's look at each other and say, you know what? I'm actually not mad at anything but the circumstance. And the circumstance is being created by ignorance. And the ignorance itself is being fueled by ego and identity politics. And whether you're on the left or right, I hate to call you both out and say, can we just get along? No, hey, shut the fuck up and start punching each other. I don't care anymore. Because I know once you guys start punching each other, a couple licks in, everybody's going to stop and be like, why are we fighting? I'm exhausted. I can't even breathe. That's what, like, half of we should get political leaders, put them in a ring and go, okay, you fight. Because I'm not willing to watch a guy go get sent to another country and get killed, have his fucking family get told that they're a gold star, this, that, and the other. Their daughters have some kind of autism or deformity because of what they were exposed to. Yada, 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 blah, 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 for years and generations to come. You know, you two, hey, duel it out. And whoever fucking wins, you guys get the vote. Okay? How about that? No, nobody's going to go for that. It sounds too brutal. Is it brutal? I don't think so. Because there's only two people that could potentially get their shit blown, right? But no, 22 people a day do it. That's okay, because at least we get to wear a suit and ties while we argue about it. You know, that's me. But buddy,
yep.
We're going to have to wrap it up.
Yep, I agree. And you're definitely on the same page there.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time and your conversation tonight. It's been really eye-opening for me personally, on the concept of where to look. I'm not even fucking bullshitting you, because I think a lot of the veteran energy is we don't know where to look right now. We don't know where to look. We don't know what to understand or what to read. A lot of people in the military, they have specializations, they have educations that are beyond, you know, what people see in a schoolhouse or a government-funded education system, right? Or even a private college or a university. The education our veterans and service members get are very unique. And their perspectives and their lives are just as unique and valuable as everybody else's. The one thing that I'm asking for everybody that listens is, instead of remembering, you know, 9/11, instead of remembering the fallen, you know, can we get some fucking action done? Like, let's just go ahead. We can remember all the fuck we want while we're doing shit. We can pull some weeds at the funeral house. Or we could pull some, scrubby dubbies on the headstones. We can do stuff instead of, just going, oh, I remember, and here's a t-shirt for $45. Thank you for coming to my political event that's here to raise money so we never forget. No, stop it, full stop it. Create a product, sell a product, generate something, create a service, sell that service, generate something, give it back to the community, build off that shit. That way, at least, by the time I'm dead, I could be like, hey, I remember that one show. Me and Matt, we went really good on this topic. And you know what? Somebody listened. And it fucking changed everything. Whether it's a veteran out there that doesn't believe in the 988 and call one, you don't have to. Just fucking call them. Or call somebody else. Somebody you trust. Call anybody. Hey, you know what I do sometimes? I pretend like I'm on the phone and I'm talking to myself because I don't ever feel safe talking to people sometimes. That's true. I don't feel safe reaching out. And that's something that a lot of veterans who are disabled and just veterans in general, that's how a lot of caregivers and their children feel. They're those hidden children back there in the room. But those guys, everybody has an opinion. Everybody's trying their best. And I honestly, sincerely, I believe that, but I think that what you described creates a world and perspectives on both sides that demonizes each other. There's a story of Cain and Abel. There's stories of Hercules. There's stories of, you can name it, right? Joseph Campbell wrote how all these stories make sense on the hero's journey. You could read that shit. Okay. Don't kill yourself. Look up fucking Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey. And then go, what if I'm the fucking hero? Right? Just for a little bit. Maybe that will get you out of your funk. Maybe that'll get you to put the gun down. Maybe that'll tell you, don't put that noose around your neck. Maybe it'll tell you, hey, I don't need to take all these pills. I don't need to shoot up all this heroin. I don't need to smoke all that crack. Hunter, please stop. I don't need all these prostitutes. Also, Hunter, please stop. And you know what? By the end of the day, maybe we could all help each other. Hunter, please reach out. Because, you're going down a bad road like Chris Farley and John Belushi. Okay, come on now. Okay, stop. P.S. On that note, thank you again, Matt. I want you to plug, please, all your websites and the ways that we can get in contact with you. Again, I appreciate your time. And right before I go, I'm going to go ahead and plug Plate Muscle Relief Cream. PlateMuscleReliefCream.com. Get the shit. Order it, buy it, use it. Matt, your turn.
And Double Doc, thank you so much for having me on your show. I really appreciate it. This has been just an incredible conversation and really rewarding. And I'll leave your listeners with this. The tribalism is getting us nowhere in our veterans community. And we've got to pull back the tribalism. And in my opinion, and my firm's opinion, the way to do that is to keep debate in Congress and back off the executive branch. Because no one's going to win that fight. And we're going to keep doing this every single administration. It's never going to stop. So let's keep the smart people, doing the PhDs and doing crazy amounts of research and putting thousands and thousands of paperwork out there into Congress during the sessions and having our open debate where we can all be participating in it, and less so behind the rules and federal rulemaking where we don't know what's going on and then we get surprised about situations like the PACT Act or the Family Caregiver Program. So follow vetregs.com and Double Doc. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. It's been wonderful talking with you.
Awesome, man. Thank you again. And this is where we sign off. At that, thank you again.
Internets. Yeah, hello. This is number 4 and then he's number represent our race number 6 because he asked me for shit.